Welcome into another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you once again for another fun week of college football talk. And boy, SJ, we were pulling the lever on the machine this weekend. We did all right for ourselves.
Yeah, not much to complain about on our end. We had some pretty damn good picks, if I don't say so myself. So we knew we had a couple weeks there where a little bit off our game, but that was, I think, more to do about the games than us because we knew we could do better than that. And this week actually proved that. So we're not just all talk. There's a little bit of substance to that style.
Yeah, I think we got on the right track, and hopefully that continues to roll here for us. But overall, I've got 11-3 here on the count, so that's a pretty darn good week of picking. And hopefully, if you followed along with us and took any of that advice, you did well for yourself. And we hope everybody had a good week with it. There were some fun games out there. We'll talk about some good games that happened here over the weekend. We'll talk about some tough call type situations, both on the officiating side and then also on decisions from coaching staffs on maybe when to go for it in a tough spot as well. We had a few of those fun type things happen here this past weekend, and of course then we'll get into our picks here this week as well, and hopefully have another great week with you. But as we get rolling, we always got a little something for the lubrication process as well. And I know I had enough share yesterday. I did attend the game in Ames. Fortunately, my Cyclones came up short against the Kansas Jayhawks, but we had a few beverages. And I know what I pulled out. I went to the aisle and I was looking around, kind of, what's going to be good here, and I pulled out a couple different things, but ended up going with the Bell's Brewery mix pack. And I know I've already shouted this one out before. I think previously this specific beer that I'm drinking at the moment is Oberon Ale, which is their big kind of summer American wheat ale that they put out. But then the mix pack also had some Two Hearted, which is another good beer if you've never tried that one before. And then they've got an experimental IPA that's not really a big IPA. It's more on the kind of lighter side that I enjoyed here this weekend as well. So that's what I'm pouring down the gullet tonight. SJ, what do you got over there?
I guess I'm going to blame unplanned trip to Target I had to make, and they had all the holiday decor out, so it kind of got me in that festive mood. I mean, I guess Christmas stuff is already out if you need to, get on your seasonal shopping and that type of thing. They got the aisles are decked, as they say. But I went with the from Boulevard, the Nutcracker Winter Warmer is the official name. We got a little bit of a bite on this one. We're looking at 7.8% by volume, so may just stick to one, but who knows? We had such a good week. I might go ahead and crack another one as we get going. But yeah, it's always a good seasonal beer. I like like we talked about, a couple weeks back, the stouts, the porters, the heavier beers this time of year. I know here in KC area we're supposed to touch 70s again next week, so the weather may not be conducive after today, so I'm gonna have to pound these suckers pretty good tonight.
Well, and it's good to have a little bit of that balance, and of course I think we're all maybe a little bit satisfied that early start to winter wasn't the official start to winter. We'll take a few more little warm sessions here before we get deep into all that crap, that's for sure. But yeah, we'll mix the beers up along the way as well. So that's what we're drinking here tonight. We'd love to hear from you guys too. Anybody out there listening, if there's something that you really love, or maybe a seasonal that you really is great that's coming out, give us a shout. We'll try to track some stuff down.
Well, and even if you're involved in that industry, or you got a hookup or connection, we're not against having a few samples sent our way. So by all means, or just let us know where we can get your stuff, and we'll go grab a couple and try them out. Let you know what we think. Definitely always up to try some new things, and I like both of us have a pretty open palate when it comes to this.
Yeah, no doubt. We'd love to do that. We're going to get into it here. First off, let's kind of give a quick recap here what we did last week with our picks. And as we said, pretty good week for us. We started off pretty darn good, really, because we got going with Monday Night Football. You had a couple of things out there for that game with Detroit. Had them on the money line. They did pick up the win. You had the overs on that game as well. Didn't quite get there. 26-14 was the final, and that was about 6.5 points shy where we needed to get it to. So kind of split that first opening night. And then we started to do well with some action as the week went along. We had Toledo Buffalo in a snowstorm on
Yeah,
Tuesday
woof.
night. That was rough.
That was wild to see, and I guess like we just must have missed it south, further enough south, but it sounded like that was kind of what I was expecting the Halloween festivities to include, because having kids, you're looking ahead time to see what's that night going to be like. You got to be out in the streets and all that,
Hmm.
but it ended up being pretty good where I'm at. But yeah, I'm glad that snow stayed up there, but it's cool to watch.
Yeah.
If I'm at the game, I enjoy it. It's fun to be kind of in that atmosphere, the snow globe look.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to walk around the neighborhood and that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and one of those what we had on that game was the unders, and you sent out the tweet as you saw the picture from the scene. It's like, oh, the unders looking pretty good tonight.
And they honestly came
They
much
came
closer
close.
to
Yeah.
that number than I thought they were going to, based upon the conditions. I know it did kind of lighten up, but being most of these, most teams hasn't played in that type of conditions so far this season. That's always kind of an added wrinkle when you get that first kind of wintry, whether it be cold, rain, snow, what have you. It's always, it always kind of throws you off a little bit when you haven't played in it since maybe the last season or even longer.
Yeah, no doubt. It really can affect things. And Toledo handled it well. They went at 31-13, so we hit the under 53, and then also had the Toledo victory that I threw on top of it, as they needed 15 and a half, and they got it done. So a couple of wins there. We had Bowling Green on the money line against Ball State, and they picked up a win. It was close, but they got it done, 24-21 the final. And that one, I had Troy giving 6 against South Alabama, and they took care of business, 28-10. And then also on Thursday night, it was TCU and Tech. We're looking for unders on that one, and they did start to pour some points on and got a late one there to ruin it too.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those, not necessarily a backdoor cover, but definitely one of those, in our mind at least, especially, I threw out the pick in my mind. It's kind of a worthless touchdown, so to speak. I don't blame, them for trying to put points up and maybe make it a game at the end, but definitely didn't really factor into the actual outcome. Texas Tech had that game in hand, but this kind of salt in our wounds, but that's okay. We recovered big time on Saturday.
Yeah, this we did. We didn't start the best on Saturday morning with the first game, but it went really well after that. So Notre Dame, I'm not really sure what was going on with them. On the road at Clemson, and they lose 31-23. They were giving 3, and we both felt pretty good about them winning that game pretty handily. And I guess it goes to show every time you think old Dabo's down and out, he finds a way to pick up a win, and they did it on Saturday against Notre Dame. They really controlled pretty early in that game, had the lead, and hung on to it. So that
And
was
he's trying to
disappointing.
be a broken record, but it's like these letdown games, they just keep. I mean, that's the
Keep
only way
coming,
you can, explain it. There's no reason that should have been that close, let alone lose it on Notre Dame's end. So we don't want to keep, touching on the same talking points, but at the same time, it's kind of obvious that they didn't bring their A game, and Clemson took advantage. So,
Yeah.
props to them.
Yeah, and Tigers' backs against their wall get a much-needed win. After that, we started to pile them up, though. Penn State was giving 11 at Maryland, not a problem. 51-15 was the final in that one, absolutely pounded them. Louisville took care of easy business against Virginia Tech as well. They win 34-3. They were only laying 10. West Virginia was laying 8.5 against BYU, no problem there. 37-7 the final. Washington laying 3.5 at USC. Did get close for a while. It was interesting. USC came back and made it a game a couple of different times, but Washington made plays down the stretch to end up picking up the victory. It ended up being a 10-point margin by the time it was all said and done. It was about 1 million points put up on the board.
I'd seen at one point, I believe it was at halftime, if I'm not mistaken, that the live totals was 103 and a half. So kind of, but like you said, USC did play a lot better than I expected them to. I honestly thought Washington would come away with a double-digit win. Mm-hmm. So for USC, I know they lost, so it doesn't feel good after the fact, and went ahead and fired their defensive coordinator today. So that kind of tells you how they feel about that performance and what they've done this season. But they did play a lot better than I expected them to. I mean, they still got the loss, but they were a lot more competitive. So, I mean, credit to them for not giving up on the season where they easily could have after the week before.
Yeah, no doubt. And then LSU, Alabama. We were looking for overs on that one, and that came through. It was over 60, and the final ended up being 42-28. Alabama wins it. Had Alabama on top of that as well, giving 4, and yeah, they took care of business. And like I said last week when we were talking about that game, it just felt like one of those games where Saban's going to get the troops rallied, and they'll make some sort of a statement, and they did play pretty well and made some big plays offensively for once.
Yeah, I know you weren't able to, score watch as closely as I was being at a game in person, but I believe the overs hit by the end of the third quarter. So that fourth quarter was easy breezy because once Alabama took the lead and the quarterback for LSU got kind of dinged up a little bit, it was pretty much sealed up right there. But pretty good game, on both ends, competitive game. But it's like what we've been saying about the SEC, these last few weeks. It's more. Even look at that Missouri and Georgia game. It's an offensive league. Whatever they want to say, here or there, it's kind of turned into more of a, I don't know if you want to say a Big 12 style, but definitely points. Mm-hmm. Points are important in that league more so than it ever used to be.
Yeah, you got to score to win. It's not. Yeah, you can't drag it out. But some of those old LSU Alabama games we remember when they were
10-7.
Yeah,
9-6. 9-6. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they sold it as a great defense, but they're really good at those. Marketing, if you want to call it, promoting, that, and because should be politicians maybe in their next life.
Yeah, they mold that storyline just the way they want it. But yeah, so those were some of our results here this last week. So yeah, really good week, 11-3 overall, and we'll hope to continue that train rolling forward here. A couple of the topics that we wanted to touch on related to the games here this weekend, and then of course talking about some of the big games that just happened. But one of those was in one of the early games in the day. And this is one we sat at the tailgate and watched, and of course we had a rooting interest from not enjoying the departing members of our conference currently, but Texas was on the ropes against K-State. Really wild finish to the game, back and forth. Both teams had multiple opportunities to try to put some more points on the board. Kansas State ended up actually missing an extra point that would have given them a 1-point lead at one point. And then it ended up costing them later. They missed a short field goal as well. And then they got one at the very end of the game to send it to overtime. So it was they obviously had plenty of chances to score, and they finally got some points to send it to OT. But then as it went in OT, one of those decisions as a coach, what is your philosophy? How do you want to play it? They hold Texas to a field goal. Texas didn't really even move the ball at all. It was actually a long kick. It was like, man, they might just miss this. But he made it. And then K-State immediately moved the ball down the field. A couple of nice plays, got inside the 5, but then couldn't punch it in. 4th and 3. They line up to go for it. Texas took a timeout, so then you're kind of thinking, well, are they going to reassess the situation? Will they come back out and kick it? Nope, they decided to still go for it. Play kind of got broken down as some pressure came, and he just had to kind of chuck it up in the air, and it got knocked down to end the contest. So disappointing way for K-State to lose the game. But, Chris Kleiman decided this is where I want to roll the dice, and it just didn't work out for him. But it definitely brings up the discussion of, kind of what is your philosophy on going for it in those types of situations. Obviously, it's always going to differ depending on the game and how you feel about it, but sometimes it can be, detrimental to your team when obviously it doesn't work out in your favor.
Yeah, there's always those situations too where it's like, are you the home team or are you the away team? How with the feel of the game? We talked about a few weeks back Oregon's decision making and kind of the chances they took, but they've been known as more of a gamble type of team. A team that's willing to take chances, whether it's in crunch time or they'll go for a 4th down on their own 35-yard line in the first quarter. And unlike Kansas State's been known as a team to do such things, maybe a gadget play here and there, but they haven't really been known for having kind of the roll of the dice type of team. So maybe that's where you kind of question it. I do know I didn't get in score watch. I was kind of busy during this game, so I didn't get to watch it as closely as maybe you did. I believe Texas had a 20-point lead at one point. Is that correct? Or they were up fairly. Yeah. I mean, a couple scores at least. Yeah. So maybe K-State coach felt that the momentum was on his side, and he just wanted to kind of put him away. But I think that's a situation. The way you laid it out, and just what I've seen and heard. That's that's kind of one where you keep playing and you live to fight another day, so to speak. You don't. That's not the situation where it's like, oh, we got to do it now or we're done for. It's
Hmm.
not like It's not like Texas had 45 points and they held them to a field goal finally, and then you get your
Yeah.
chance and you want to put them away. They were struggling to score at that point, obviously by their possession and overtime. So
Hmm.
I think, from all accounts, it sounds like that would have been the time to go for it or not go to kick the field goal and
Yeah.
play for a second overtime or next overtime. At the same time, though, if he makes it, he's the king of Manhattan, and
Hmm.
Buffalo Sweat's renamed to climbing climbing body odor, whatever you want to call it. Like, so yeah, I see both ways. So yeah, it's either you're the man or the mouse, depending on what perspective and how things turn out.
Yeah. I in the moment I guess I'm always kind of one of those guys where I love the if you feel good about the chance to give your team the chance to just go ahead and win it, at that point in the game, it's obviously one play could make the difference. So, kind of basing it on a holistic, this is how this team's playing, whatever. It still only takes that one play to come up and bite you. So,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hate it totally, but as the announcers kind of mentioned during the broadcast, it did make me think a little bit too. Was the way that this game is played out in the fourth quarter, K State looked like the better team at that moment. So yeah, maybe you do extend it a little bit and give your team a chance to make some more plays because you have been doing that consistently throughout the end of the game. So yeah.
Well, it wasn't like weather was a factor thing. It wasn't a tough angle. Maybe your kicker has been struggling, or was an injured kicker, maybe even thrown into the mix. None of those, as far as I know, weren't in play. So maybe just a little bit overzealous in that moment. But
Yeah. Yeah,
if he does it again, he might do it different. Who
yeah.
knows?
The only little thing that was kind of lingering in my mind was the fact that they had botched the extra point earlier and they had missed a short field goal. But it wasn't necessarily the kicker's fault on either one because Texas got some pressure on both of those kicks, and that's what kind of messed it all up. So I don't, it's one of those things where it's a pretty hard call to make one way or the other. He made the choice, and obviously K State's living with it, but unfortunate that
Well,
they couldn't
maybe
pull off.
sends a message to your special teams. No, going forward, maybe there's not a lot of trust there either.
Yeah,
So
true.
it could end up biting you down the road again. So
Yeah.
it's if you went with this gut, like I said when we talked about the Oregon thing, if you're going with your gut and that's the way you feel, I'm willing to live with that if I was a fan of that team. But it's just kind of a feel for the game thing.
Hmm.
Like I said before, if he makes it, he's the king. If he misses it, he's the black sheep or whatever they want to call him now. So.
Hmm. Another game that was a big one in the Big 12. I got to watch the beginning of this one, but then, of course, as I went to kick off for the game I was at, I didn't get to watch the very end of it. But Oklahoma State gets it done. They pull off the win in what could be the last ever Bedlam game. We don't know how that's going to play out down the road. There's been lots of background talk about what they're going to figure out there. But, Okie State kind of gets that little last shot at them and wins it over Oklahoma. They storm the field, tear down the goalposts, throw it in the pond on campus, and have some fun. And they've really set themselves up now, and they're in a great spot towards the top of the conference to get into the championship game, which is crazy the way that the season started for them. But Ollie Gordon, we talked about last week, the running back, great player, had another good game, and they just continue to seem like to improve. And that's back-to-back weeks for Oklahoma to drop
Yeah.
a big game, and you don't see that very often either.
And then on top of that, I mean, they damn near lost the week before against Central Florida,
Mm-hmm.
so they're on a little bit of a trend here, and not in a good way either. So they got some work to do, and kind of get back on track here. But that was kind of the more surprising thing to me. That I was like, they struggled the week before, kind of lost last week to Kansas. That there's no way they're gonna, there's no way they're gonna 3 weeks in a row. But there it was.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in a game like that, if you can't get ready and get up for a game like that,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Especially being the last one on top of it potentially.
Mm-hmm.
I just watching the parts that I saw, it was. And maybe this isn't the case. Maybe there's just Cliff's Notes version that I got, but it was interesting that Oklahoma. I know I'm not take anything away from him, but it just seemed like even on the deep balls, I understand his role on the team as a slot receiver, but it seemed like Stoops was getting a lot of the targets in the pass game when they needed to come back there late in the game. And I understand he's a possession receiver. He's going to catch the ball and you get it to him, and not even talking about the last play, but a couple of those plays which. And there might have been interference on one of those down at the goal line. They didn't call, but either way, I don't necessarily think that would be the receiver I would think of Oklahoma would have going, running a 40-yard go route.
Yeah.
So I don't know if his injuries. I don't follow him that close. So
Yeah.
if there is, I mean, that's a totally different story. But I would think that they would have, a couple, three other, big targets they get the ball to. Just, I don't know if, it's the transfer thing. Maybe Gabriel wasn't what they thought he was going to be, which is the case with a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, I can speak to that myself. So it's not always, what you think it's going to be. You see the highlights, the big plays, but it's there's still something to be said for, continuity and just, having experience playing with each other and kind of, a quarterback knowing where his receiver is going to be, and on the same side, the receiver knowing where the quarterback wants to put the ball, especially in crunch time.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing, I guess, to kind of just point out as far as Oklahoma is concerned. You mentioned you're used to them having one of those dudes,
just chuck it up and they go get it. I mean,
yeah. I mean, the CD Lambs, all kinds of guys over history that they've had that are able to get downfield and make plays like that. And maybe they don't really have that guy right now. Obviously things have changed with the coaching turnover there, and they've had to go to the portal a lot to do some things. And boy, maybe that's going to be a tough spot for them now as they transition into a different conference where they're going to have, a lot of competition recruiting wise. It'll be interesting to see how that goes down the road. But they're definitely a little bit different spot than they were a few years ago for sure. You mentioned at the end of that game there was maybe a questionable no call as well. There was some. Even from the other side, I heard some people say, "Well, I didn't really love that there wasn't maybe a flag at some point in one of those." And we saw that in a number of games. That was another thing we were going to bring up. Is there were some calls that were pretty poor calls in our opinion, officiating wise, and depending on when those things happen, it can be such a huge impact on the outcome of a game. Now, we always, of course, will go back to, and everybody always kind of circles back to, well, that wasn't the one reason why you lost the game. You still had other opportunities, and it's very true. Usually within every game, there's always other opportunities to make up for that or get over those types of situations. But, with having maybe maybe it's a team that has a limited offense. They don't have big explosive plays, and then it doesn't go their way that one time. Boy, that can really change the outcome of a contest, and we're seeing that. And of course, with what we're doing here and watching totals and scores and points, it has a big impact.
Yeah, and especially when it's in the cases that I'm thinking of that kind of come to mind from just this last week or even the last couple of weeks. It's the egregious type of calls. We're not talking about the ticky-tack holding or the 50-50 call where it could be, you see it both ways. We're kind of talking about the I'll just bring a specific example, not to pull the knife in any deeper, but in the contest you were at in Iowa State, they called a punt return out of bounds. What it cost them 25 yards in a 2-possession game or so. I mean, that's a big call, even in the Nebraska game down late. I mean, like you said, they could have played better. They could have done better throughout the whole, rest of the game. But you get an obvious pass interference call at the opponent's 10-yard line with, in the closing minutes that would have set you up, almost first and goal, and you're down by 4 points, 3 points. That makes a big difference. So it's all about timing and I'm like the type of foul that you're talking about. Of course, you want every call to go your way and nothing to go against you. That's obviously not reality. That's kind of just like a fantasy. We don't feel that. We don't feel that way about the teams we root for, or any teams that we watch, even if we got money on them or not. But it's kind of more about the timing thing. And with replay, the way it is, you could fix a lot of these calls, and it's always baffling how some things are reviewable and some things aren't. Where the line gets drawn there, and that's obviously that maybe it's an off-season discussion we can have on the show and kind of break it down a little more detailed. But it's just it's all, I mean, it's all kind of it's still subjective, even
Hmm.
with replay and cameras and technology that we have. So that kind of, I mean, I thought that was always kind of the point of replay, to take that subjectivity out of it and kind of say, is this or this, and kind of just make it black or white.
Hmm. Well, and then you have some situations that change so much just by how the play unfolds as well. Of course, going back to the importance of it, what you mentioned there with Nebraska being on the doorstep of the no call, that punt return for Iowa State, they're going to be at the 2 yard line,
All
and
right.
what ends up happening is they turn the drive into no points. They didn't score on that drive, and which is their fault still. But yeah, I mean, huge impact. But just the way that the play unfolds, because what ended up happening on that one is they said that it was an inadvertent whistle when he wasn't out of bounds. So then, of course, if that does happen on the field, maybe a player does react differently. They don't finish out the play. So that kind of comes down to the argument, too, of as an official, should they be officiating with replay kind of in their back of their mind? Like, do you let a play like that unfold even when you have maybe a tiny question of did he step out, and just let it happen and then go back and take a look at it? Because the other way around, you can make arguments. Well, this guy slowed down and didn't try to make the play now, so you can't really say, oh well, he's in. We're going to let it unfold as it would have, and it's a score. So interesting. I mean, you don't want guys, I don't think, necessarily always thinking that way, because that's a tough way also just to be hands off and never make a call. But in some of those weird situations like that, do you just let the play run out?
I mean, if Amazon can get you, a thing of coffee in about 2 hours, the least they could do is get a call right, with all that technology that we got these days. So, I mean, a lot of it, I think, would. I'm not saying it would change the calls, but I think you'd get a little bit more clarity, and then maybe also just like make you could maybe accept calls a little bit better, as if there was some type of accountability.
Hmm.
I mean, it doesn't have to be the actual official himself, but maybe a head of official or something, have a statement after, or even just explain something. Because I know a lot of fans think they know the rules of the game when in fact they don't. And a lot of times I don't. I've been watching sports since as long as I can remember, and there is rules and situations and things that sometimes I thought I knew, but I didn't know. And
Hmm.
I'm willing to admit that. Like,
Hmm.
so if there's a if there was just a little bit more explanation, I think that would go a long ways in, like, maybe just making people have a little bit more confidence in that the game is being called the best that it can be called.
Hmm.
It's easy to, kind of say, oh man, like, we're getting screwed, hometown refs, whatever.
Hmm.
Especially with, we've seen, not to talk bad about gambling, but we've seen a actual professional official, in a scandal, or
Yeah. Yeah.
but did prison time
Yeah.
because some type of situations like that. So that would help the situation. I don't think that's probably going to happen if it hasn't happened by now, especially the way people are judging media because of certain heads of state, making outlandish comments. They obviously don't trust, people that are just doing a legitimate job. But
Hmm.
anyways, so like, yeah, let's, it's probably just going to keep being this way, but it would be nice just to have a little bit more clarity. And I think just better utilization of the technology that we have. I mean, you spend this money on all these cameras and, all this type of, technology to help you make the right call. Like, use it then,
Hmm.
let's make it worth its while.
Well, and that brings up a. We don't have to dive into this, but I think this is an interesting topic that we can touch on down the road too, maybe in the off season, like you said, is for the casual fan or somebody coming in and starting to become a football fan. I can understand how confusing it can be to try to understand the game when you are seeing some things that you thought you understood and then look different at the way it's called on the field, or even obviously between division or levels of football. There are rules that are different between high school and college and then the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets pretty darn confusing sometimes. I've done that plenty of times, even as a professional broadcaster during a game where I thought, oh, that's supposed to be this, and then I stop myself and think, oh, wait, that's actually at that level of football. I'm mixed up on my division here. So
Well, I
it's
mean, even
tough.
you get certain areas like where I'm at. I cover events on both sides, but different states, and those states each have their own bylaws, so the rules vary from state to state, and that's within a 10-mile radius. So a lot changes in that small. And I mean, you mentioned people might be saying, oh, what do you mean a new football fan? Who's going to be a new fan of football? I mean, they got damn games in Germany this morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. They're trying to get new fans wherever they can get them. So obviously, what do you think? A German, got his brat and his beer with him, and he's watching this game, and this guy friggin' goes on this, goes to a little camera. I know they got replay in soccer, but it's a little different the way they do it. But they're probably. I wonder what they're thinking about. Kind of the replay setup. I don't think there was. I'm trying to think back to the game. There's maybe a couple calls that did replay, and there wasn't anything major questionable in this morning's game. But I mean, they're obviously trying to grow the game, and this could be something that I don't think is going to deter anybody, but it'd definitely be interesting to get someone's take on that hasn't grown up watching football, their whole life, and what they think about the replay system compared to, I'm just going to throw soccer out because obviously that's a popular sport across the globe. What they think compared to their replay system.
Yeah, it would be an interesting topic to dive into at some point. By the way, shout out to the folks in Germany for having amazing concession stands, apparently, because I saw a couple of pans to the crowd, and they had the actual handles on the commemorative cups, almost like a Stein out there drinking your beer.
Nice.
That's the way to do
it.
it.
So not that little crummy plastic we get here in the States here.
Exactly.
I've just seen because there's been a lot of international things, and I don't want to go into detail how the game turned out. The one I watched that was in Ireland last year, but as far as what they offer and the pricing is just freaking night and day compared to what we're stuck with. I know there's a few stadiums in NFL against Atlanta, Seattle, and then there might be a baseball one too. But they're like $5, for a Coke, a decent price stuff, like popcorn, everything's like $5 or under. But for the most part, we kind of get jobbed, as we know, going to these stadiums. So I have seen some of the, where they have whether it be England or Germany or, whatever, they kind of have some interesting offerings. And then on top of that, their pricing is just, pretty amazing compared to the 15 to 17, even $20 beers that we're kind of stuck with here at the NFL stadiums here. Even some of the college games are getting pretty pricey these days.
Oh, believe me, I thoroughly enjoyed standing in line for 25 minutes yesterday to get my $25 worth of 2 corn dogs and a water.
Jeez, yeah, I think that might have been something we mentioned, earlier in one of the podcasts. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's just like your brain just turns off and you're like, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, whatever. But yeah, you would never do that if you're just walking into a Hy-Vee or a what have you, a regular grocery store. You would never just be like, oh yeah, that's a normal price, we're good with that. Yeah. But it's at a game, it's kind of like when you're on vacation, the money doesn't count there.
Yeah, it's for you. This doesn't count against the bank account, right?
Yeah,
until the next day when you pull up the ledger.
I got rewards points or something that'll cancel out, right?
Yeah. There's a whole nother world we can get into on that on someday too. This whole we got to make the world go cashless and all kinds of other issues that arise. So very, very fun stuff. We're gonna move on though into some more fun football. There wasn't, I don't know, any other games that you really wanted to point out that were fun ones over the weekend, SJ? I thought we kind of brought up some of the big ones, but
yeah, honestly, a lot of the good games ended up being our picks, to be honest. The USC Washington was a really good game. Obviously disappointed in somewhat like that Notre Dame game. I thought that Clemson could actually be a pretty good game. We were kind of hoping Notre Dame would be on the other side, and the late games didn't exactly lend for a lot of drama. The Pac-12 after dark, but we're kind of getting to that point of the season where it's obviously we had the daylight savings overnight, and that's another loaded weapon there. We want to get into that someday. But it seems like, we're going to get to the point where the schedules are more, what do you want to call it, afternoon, morning loaded here later in the season. I know it's got to be going away, but as far as my viewing habits, the Big Ten no November night games bull crap is going to be going away here pretty soon. So that kind of screws up a lot of the primetime matchups here. I know we got Penn State, Michigan coming up this week, so I think that will probably be 2:30, 11 a.m., whatever it is. So I think we're going to the night games. Maybe we'll be getting a little bit more sleep, but I think we'll I don't know. We'll probably dig one or two up here in the next week or so, give us a reason to stay up late. And I know I got being a combat sports fan, I got a big UFC card this week, so won't be in the picks on the show, but I'll throw some on the Twitter later this week.
All right, awesome. Yeah. Then the game time thing does it get interesting too. I know, and especially with the conference changes that are happening, obviously that's a big impact on all this crap. Because Iowa State, my team's next game is their first trip out to Provo to play BYU, and it's not even it's a 9:30 at night Central Time kickoff. So,
Nice. There you go.
yeah,
Well, you'll be. I guess one of us will be up late then. So I take that back. What I just said.
yeah,
That's good. That'll give me a reason. I'm looking for a reason to stay up. I don't want to. I don't. I mean, whether it be a good game or not, I'd still rather have football on my TV till at least close to midnight as I can.
yeah, no doubt. Well, let's get into some fun picks here this week then as well. I got a couple of early week things here, not maybe as much as I had last week. I don't know about you. You looking at anything real early here?
Same too. It's got a pair early in the week. Like we said last week, these are going to be our. I mean, at least for me. I guess I shouldn't speak for you. I apologize. But early in the week, it's going to just be the little sprinkle, nothing too serious. We can keep the nipple on these, but it's. I don't want to keep bringing it up, but damn, before you know it, the season's going to be over. So any game we
Wow.
can find some type of angle on or something that makes us interested or worth maybe making a play, and I'm gonna latch onto that. So I got a couple here early in the week. If you, I can throw out the first one. If
Go for it.
got Ohio -7 at Buffalo. That team we've played against before. I believe we played against Buffalo a couple weeks back. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure I went against them. But either way, the -7. The tricky thing with early in the week, at least the book I usually play through, and that's another story that we could touch on maybe next week. That's going to be changing. I'm going to be probably switching over to the ESPN Bet app. I know they kind of basically went into business with Pin Play, which used to be the Barstool Gaming, and that's my local establishment here at Hollywood Casino. They're out at the Kansas Speedway. That's who's going to be their sports book of choice. So I'm going to give them a whirl. So we'll cover that later and kind of get into their details. I'm in a long story short, I'm not exactly happy with DraftKings as of late. So we're going to maybe make a switch, but that's another story for a different day. We can cover that when that comes to fruition. But what I was going to say, so much for a long story short, right? But the early in the week, it's hard to get anything other than just a spread.
Yeah.
So I know we're a lot out, things can happen, but a lot of the I just think you know what your money line is going to be. Your points, your totals. It's almost like it's a game of like give you a little, take a little away, give you a little, take a little away. It's like they're trying to just see what they can get at you, and that's their job. I get it. They're there to make money, but for the purpose of this show, I don't appreciate it. So I'm gonna start maybe shopping around a little bit, but basically, I don't like to go with that the spreads, especially on these action games where it seems to be so 50-50, even when a team's 8-2 versus a 5-3. It seems like the 5-3 has got as damn near as good a shot to win as the 8-2 team, but kind of got to go through the record, see who they played. Of course, we do our research, but at the same time, it's such a coin flip. I don't necessarily like playing the spreads, so that's why to bring it all back to where we started. That's why I'm going, real easy on these early week games, just because it's not necessarily anything against the teams. It's that there's a lot of variables, especially any game, but especially with a conference like the MAC.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's something else to point out that actually on our end is probably fairly detrimental to ourselves, just because we want to do this early in the week so folks have a chance to listen to it and start to look at some games. But those lines that come out, you never know if that's just something that the book is trying to get some bait to play with, or if that's what they really think is going to happen.
Right.
So yeah, we get got by that a couple times, I'm sure, this year. But that makes it.
Hey,
a
we
little
ain't
tougher.
scared. That's the point right there. See, we're willing to take those risks just for you to make you some money.
That's true. Well, and
I
hopefully
mean, we were 11-3, so we know a little bit about something.
Well, and hopefully the risk that we're taking maybe gets better for you by the end of the week when you're betting. Maybe that line gets better for you. So, I had that one on my list too. I like that one. I like also that same night. I was going to go Northern Illinois. They're laying 10.5 against Ball State. Again, maybe a little bit scary just the way those MAC games play out, and that is a decent spread. But Northern Illinois has won a couple of big games as of late. Ball State's having a really down year as far as their kind of competitiveness within that conference goes. So I like kind of the double up there. I like Northern Illinois that night too on that Tuesday.
Following up on my thought here, just being the spread deal, I'm actually going to take Eastern Michigan plus 18.5 against Toledo. I think Toledo is going to win. Don't get me wrong, but 18.5 that's a healthy number.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they can. Basically, what I just said a few minutes ago, being as competitive as these games tend to be, I think they can cover that 18.5. I can still see a 14-point loss, even a 17-point loss, but I think they can be within that margin for sure.
Yeah, that's a pretty good number there to get. I liked one on Friday night. SMU was laying 16 against North Texas. Again, maybe a little bit high on the number, and I obviously am not going to play this very large, but still, SMU has won some games by big numbers this year, and North Texas has seemed to be a team so far this year that struggled to put up points. So I'm gonna ride there with SMU and the Mustangs to get that done on Friday.
All right, I was hesitant to go back to this game, but I'm not picking a winner, so I'm like, okay, it'll probably be all right. Wyoming, my old
Your Cowboys.
Wyoming, yeah, they let me down last time, but this time I don't need much out of them because I'm taking the over 50.5 against UNLV. UNLV, shoot, man, they came out of nowhere, 7-2 this year. Funny story. My wife's cousin is actually a receiver on the team.
Okay.
So if you see Dominic Jacinto, kind of maybe throw a little bit, throw some props his way. He had a pretty good game last week. But UNLV's got 40 plus points in 6 of their 7 wins. So if I can get 11, 12 points out of Wyoming, we hit that 50.5 easily. So I'm not asking much, if you win, so be it. I don't care about that. Let's just get that over 50.5, please.
All right, I like that. Yeah, that's a fun one. I'm gonna go. That's I guess the early week stuff for me. Do you have anything else during the week?
No. That's I'm ready for the weekend. I'm
Okay.
and same thing. I'm gonna be and then this is a lot of it has to do with just when we make these plays and what the board looked like when I looked at it. It's going to be a lot of overs from my end, but I'll let you go ahead and get started. If you feel froggy, go ahead and leap.
Okay, one that I kind of noticed right away as I was scrolling through scores, not because I know a whole heck of a lot about either of these teams, but I have kind of paid attention a little bit to how one of these squads has trended. And they coming off a big win last week. NC State picked up a nice one over Miami this past weekend. It was kind of a milestone win for their coach as well. He was pretty emotional afterwards. But they're only laying 2.5 right now at Wake Forest. So I don't know, that the spread seems a little fishy to me because I thought that number would have been a little bit higher.
Yeah,
but
right. Yeah, last time we talked about Wake Forest, I think it was Chris Paul, right?
Yeah, exactly. Tim Duncan still playing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know. I like NC State a lot with that number. I'm gonna ride them.
I might be going and following up here on that one. The next one I did have on my list though was okay. Now I'm not an exact number, so someone's gonna have to go back and do some research on this. But I believe like 20 of their last 21 games, USC's has hit the over against their opponent, and they got Oregon this week over 74. That sounds crazy, but not in this conference. I mean, especially you look at that USC Washington last night. What Oregon? What did Knicks have? 6 passing touchdowns last week? Something like that. Like, I mean, so points aren't exactly hard to come by. I think that's actually a pretty easy bet there. I mean, I could be proven wrong. I doubt it. Just when's the last time you saw a 21-20 Pac-12 game? And it's been a while. So I'll go ahead and take the over 74 on that one. I know it sounds crazy, but what did we just say a minute ago? Is like over 100 some points. The live number, at least at halftime. I know that's a little different, but at the same time, 74 seems outlandish, and I'm sure that's gonna. I think that number's gonna go up. I'm gonna have to try to get my play in real quick here, probably tomorrow, hopefully.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and you would think that that's the same type of game because obviously the game that Oregon and Washington played against each other was pretty tight, and they both scored a lot of points in that one. So you would expect that to be a pretty high scoring affair. Another one I wanted to throw out there as well. is Arizona. They are playing very well for some reason. Kind of a
Gronk
team
was in the
that.
house, man. That's why Gronk had the freaking bro tank. It was on.
Oh man, that's all bets are off then.
Yeah.
So now he's gonna have to wear the bro tank up to Colorado. Might be a little chillier.
Yeah,
Uh,
he don't mind showing a little nip. You know that.
exactly.
The nipples we're talking about on our bets here. He's gonna be showing the real McCoy.
Yeah, no doubt. So Arizona at Colorado, they're laying 9.5. I'd feel pretty good about that one. That's probably a whiskey neat type of bet
Mm-hmm.
there for me. I think they get that done.
Shoot, man, you might even be able to throw a beer on that. The way Colorado's going,
Yeah.
changing play calling duties between coaches here, and who knows what they're going to do this week. So, yeah, that's a hell of a pick. I like that one. I got a couple more left. The first one, sorry to bring this team up again, but I do like this number. The Kansas is getting 3.5 versus Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tech, that is obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
they did not look. I mean, I know they won. They did not look that great against I don't know. I guess probably less mediocre to be being nice to say about TCU,
Mm-hmm.
but a mediocre to below average TCU team. And then Kansas has won 3 of the last 4 by at least 5 points, including a win over Oklahoma in there, of course. So I think that's a pretty safe bet there, 3.5. And I might even, like I said before, maybe do a little bit of a make my own line there and kind of juice that number up a little bit.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one too. This is another one that I probably would feel really good about. I don't know if I'd be popping bottles on this, but definitely the beer stein. I'm probably going to lean that way as the week goes along. But Okie State, of course, you worry about the letdown game, and I've been bit by that plenty of times this year, as we've continued to talk about. But they're only giving 2.5 on the road against Central Florida. Now, granted, Central Florida started to play a little bit better. They did give Oklahoma that scare a couple of weeks ago, but boy, the way Okie State's rolling right now, and the way their run game is so good, being able to control the ball, I don't see them having too much of a problem picking up that win, especially the importance they have on some of these games now. I think they get that done. I like the Pokes there.
Yeah, probably go just to make mention. You're doing a better job than I am. But the last game, I'll just go back. We'll always throw the emojis on with the graphic we put out. But KU, I'd probably go a beer. But on this one, the last pick, it'd probably be a I'm gonna pop the bottle, but it's gonna be kind of like remember when you were a kid and you got them little, like the fireworks, but they were the champagne poppers, But you'd always get the dud, right? And it'd be like pop, and it kind of barely go. That doesn't signify my confidence. That's more of how ugly I think this game could be. And I'm gonna go with the unders. 42.5, Northwestern and Wisconsin. Both teams are averaging less than 20 points a game, just right under 20. But in conference play, Northwestern's at 19.8 points per game. I did a little math here for you guys, and 19.5 is Wisconsin within conference games. So obviously, that put us under 42.5. And I just think it's going to be an ugly game. I mean, you look at that last week, Northwestern and Iowa was god awful. Would be a compliment, I think, to that game. That was terrible. I mean that's a crap hole of a stadium, but even Wrigley didn't deserve that. Like, God, that was terrible. But I think it could be another one
that
of
many
the,
runs, right?
yeah. That could be. It could be another 10-7, maybe a 13-10. Best case scenario. 17-14, but we'll look and it'll be a 42-41 game right now. I don't think those teams have the capabilities to do that. And Wisconsin actually does. I mean, defensively, I don't think they'll give up a lot of points. So that's why I think that number could stay under 42.5. And this will definitely be one of my most confident games that I'm in, probably along with that USC Oregon over.
Yeah. Another one I wanted to throw out. This is maybe going to go back, taper my confidence level down just a little bit, just because of the magnitude, and you worry about maybe a slip at some point. But I'm still feeling fairly good about it. I'm probably going to go the whiskey neat on this bad boy. But big game. Georgia is taking on Ole Miss, hosting Between the Hedges. They're laying 11.5, so it is a little bit of a big number. But Ole Miss has kind of not stepped up to the plate when a big game is rolled around to them and an opportunity like this. And the way that Georgia has been this year, they kind of been waiting for these moments where someone wants to doubt them again, and then they put up a big number again. So I like them to bounce back. They had a nice little test there from Missouri last week, which I think a lot of people expected. But this is one where I think they take care of business a little more handily, and they get that done against the Rebels.
Two other games I'd keep an eye on. I'm not going to make a play for the show, but I might, on the side here, make a little. There's nothing wrong with a side bet, right? We all
Hmm.
got our little side bets or things on the side that we like to do. It we'll cover that. But Tennessee and Missouri. When I saw it, I think Missouri was getting 1 point. I would maybe look at a money line on that, depending on what kind of number you can get. That would be an option. And then also that Penn State Michigan. I know they've score wise, when you look at what they've done this year, Michigan hasn't been tested a lot. There's just so much going on with that team. It's kind of like, what do you want, like a powder keg, It's
Hmm.
just a matter of time, it seems like. I'm not, I wouldn't call for the outright upset, but I could definitely see Penn State giving them a game, and depending on the number that you get, it might even be worth take rolling the dice on a money line there for Penn State. I think that there's not going to be that big Ohio State hype that there was coming into that game. Or can they pull off the upset finally and do that? They're kind of expected to lose this game, right? So
Yeah.
maybe it's a chance for them to finally, put a big game together. And
Hmm.
it's a lot of it's, I mean, just a lot of it's to do with what's going on with Michigan. While I'm thinking this way, and like I said, it's not a ton of confidence. Otherwise, I'd be making a play for the show, but it's something to keep an eye on, especially as seems like every day there's something new that comes out with this the scouting scandal or whatever. Have they given it a name yet? It's nothing Gate yet, is it? It always has to be something Gate, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
don't know.
freaking khaki Gate, right?
Yeah, khaki gate. There you go. What I want to know is which Ohio State staffer is going to be on the sideline dressed in somebody else's
Yeah,
gear. That's
right.
what I really want to know is going to happen.
Well, then we need. Okay, we did it for 1 or 2 weeks, Halloween, whatever. But people need to stop dressing up like the Michigan Scout. Like, that's okay. It's not funny anymore. It's about as amusing as Taylor Swift in the friggin' suite. Okay, let's
Yeah,
move on.
yeah, we're done. We're done with that. The guy got fired. Okay, it's over.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, like, what? Yeah, I don't think. Yeah. Anyways, I was like, he wasn't. According to him, he wasn't making anything, but we know that's
yeah,
probably not true. But
no, no, 100% not. You don't just do that for fun. Uh, so yeah, interesting storyline to keep following there. One other one I would just throw out there, the game that I'm gonna kind of keep an eye on. You mentioned there was a little bit of maybe some quarterback injury issues there with LSU with Daniels, but if he's okay and if they're up to speed, and even if not, they've got Florida this week, and I see them handling that one, bouncing back and taking care of business. Right now, the line's at 13.5, so I think it is going to depend on health, but that's one to keep an eye on too. I think to watch here this weekend. So, yeah, there are some interesting games, big games as far as that. Georgia, Ole Miss, and then obviously the Penn State, Michigan will be ones that a lot of people have eyes on. So we'll have some fun watching those and seeing how everything plays out. And hopefully we've got a whole bunch more wins to come back and talk to you about here next week, and we'll keep pouring the beers. Maybe they'll get more expensive as we move on down the line here.
yeah, I might have to use a couple of those vacation days I have stocked up after that big week we had, and hopefully we can, follow up with that. But like we said, it's always it's a hit or miss deal. But we'll feel pretty good after last week because those 2 weeks before that were not indicative of our talents, I believe. But like I said, we'll have these picks and then maybe add a couple extra side bets just for kicks and giggles, and then I'll definitely have some little MMA UFC. I'll have a couple of picks on that. There's a more you're looking at the main event. It was gonna be a grand week. John Jones was supposed to be fighting for the heavyweight title against Stipe Miocic, and damn injuries. Who knows what kind of pills you were popping before to get up to that heavyweight. But that's that's another story. But that's kind of a letdown. But there's still a couple good fights on the card, so I'll probably have something out later this week on, of course, Twitter. You can follow us on there, and CP can give out the info, and then let him know when to get a hold of the show as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, share, subscribe, follow, rate us, interact with the polls, all that good stuff. You can find the pod on Spotify. Also is available through the Amazon platform and Google Podcasts. So if you want to let other folks know where you can find them, you can do that. And then, on Twitter, our handles at SJMBets and at CherokeeCP. So follow us there and then interact with us there if you'd like as well. SJ does a nice job putting out that graphic for you so you know what to follow along with our picks as well for the week. And yeah, then we might throw out some other fun stuff for you throughout the week as things go along, and then we react to what's happening on the field. So we hope you do that. We hope you enjoy the pod. Hope you keep sharing us. We're having fun with you, talking all about what's going on in the world of college football and wagering. So that's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us again this week. We'll see you next week for some more covers.